besties, and welcome to another Genshin theory! My big Conria theory has a lot to do with the individual personalities and values of the 7 Archons, but so far we've only met 3 in-game. It's hard to justify part of my Conria theory without exploring the 4 that we don't know yet, so today I'm gonna do that. Not all of this has to do with Conria, but I think exploring the Archons' personalities can tell us something about their behavior during the Cataclysm. For a long time I've been referring to the Hydro Archon as the God of Justice, or literally just the Hydro Archon, but according to lines from the closed beta test, they actually do have a name. Thanks to the Reddit user PM Me Your Robot Girl in the subreddit r/Genshin Impact Leaks, we know that the Hydro Archon's true name is Focalor.
Court of Fontaine? The wine over there is a bit different. I'm most partial to their Fuller High Sapphire wine. But that winery... What are your plans for the next 2 days? I want to avoid Focalors.
This is, as always, taken from the list of 72 demons found in the Lesser Key of Solomon. It looks like the closed beta test had a lot of Venti voice lines where he gives his opinions about the other Archons. Venti calls the Hydro Archon Focalor. In Gnosticism, the Christian offshoot that Genshin Impact is based on, demons aren't necessarily evil. They're known for helping their human conjurers with whatever they may request. Not all of them are violent either. For example, the demon Celios is described as a pacifist who helps humans fall in love, and the demon Fornius clears up people's conflicts. But Focalor is one of the violent ones. In demonology, he kills humans by drowning them and overthrows warships just because he can. I don't think all of the gods in Genshin are perfect copies of their demonic counterparts, but some of them are strikingly similar. For example, Marcosius is one of the few demons who doesn't play tricks on conjurers but helps them without any initiation, and was absent from the group of fallen angels from which he came for a considerable amount of time. Similarly, Genshin's Marcosius, Guoba, was an incredibly kind and giving god who ended up disappearing for a long time. Another good example is Baal, a demon with 3 faces, and we just so happen to have 3 representations of Baal in Genshin. I think the Hydro Archon is going to be somewhat similar to her version of herself in Gnostic demonology because Genshin has set a precedent for that. The God of Justice doesn't exactly have a great reputation, so it would make sense for her to be named after one of the more sinister demons. She isn't one of the original Archons, meaning she replaced the old Hydro Archon at some point in the past. I assume this was before the Cataclysm, but we can't know for sure yet. The old Hydro Archon sent the Lock folk out across Teyvat as spies, but not because she actually wanted to spy on them. Instead, she just wanted to feel connected to the rest of Teyvat and the other Archons. When she died and the God of Justice took over, the Lock folk didn't recognize her as the new Hydro Archon and ruler of Fontaine, so they cut off ties from the country altogether. We don't know exactly what happened to make them react so negatively to the God of Justice, but obviously it wasn't good. Maybe they just resent her for replacing who they perceive as their Archon, but think back to what Focalor is known for in demonology. Focalor is a prolific murderer. I'm not saying that the God of Justice killed the previous Hydro Archon for sure, but I do think it's a possibility. Given that she is the God of Justice, maybe the old Hydro Archon did something that she found to be unjust, and killing her was the only appropriate response. All of the current Archons have short quotes on their respective elemental character ascension materials. In the Hydro Archon's quote, she comes off as quite aggressive. She says, "My ideals have no stains, I must correct you. People here bear no sins in the eyes of the gods. Only laws in the tribunal can judge someone. They can judge even me, so praise my magnificence and purity." To me, it seems like she's talking to someone else. She says, "I must correct you," implying that this is a quote pulled from a conversation. Maybe this is the last thing she said to the old Hydro Archon before killing her. And I don't think it's completely out of character for the God of Justice to be a ruthless killer either. In Dainsleif's quote about her, he says, "The God of Justice lives for the spectacle of the courtroom, seeking to judge all other gods. The God of Justice likes to enact justice upon others, even her fellow Archons, how she sees fit." I may be vilifying the God of Justice prematurely though, so take all this with a grain of salt. This is just my personal speculation on what her character may be like, but when we inevitably meet her in Fontaine, I could be completely wrong. I do think it would be cool to have an Archon who's just straight up evil, though. Besides the Hydro Archon, I think the Archon we know the least about is Murata. We have no story or voice lines about her, so we're pretty much left in the dark. But I think it's worth mentioning that Murata is one of Genshin's several characters to come from Honkai Impact. As of writing this script, I only started playing Honkai today because my girlfriend asked me to, but I can already tell it's a wildly different game. Honkai is sci-fi and Genshin is fantasy, for example. But there are multiple characters between the games who share similar names and appearances. The most commonly referenced is Raiden Mei, who is Honkai's version of the Raiden Shogun, otherwise known as Raiden A. It's literally just one letter off. Another is Yae Sakura, who is Honkai's Yae Miko. Honkai actually had a Genshin crossover event where Fischl and Keqing were part of their world, so the two games are clearly connected. And it's not like these are MiHoYo's only two games, so the crossover between them is definitely deliberate. I'm not saying that Honkai and Genshin characters who share names and appearances are in fact the same people altogether, but they are clearly related in one way or another. In Honkai Impact there are these things called bubble universes, and I think Genshin Impact is a bubble universe of Honkai Impact, but that's another video for another day. Given that Genshin's Murata is named after Honkai's Murata Himeko, I think we can at least say that they'll look similar because there's a precedent for that. As for her personality, it's kinda hard to determine. I really don't think Genshin and Honkai characters share super similar personalities, so we can't derive Genshin Muratas from Honkai Muratas. We don't have a demon name for her either, so we can't use that. For now, I'm gonna guess that Murata isn't an alias, but it is actually her true god name. Murata isn't in the Lesser Key of Solomon, but there are a few Genshin gods whose names are bastardizations of the real demon names they come from. Urabashi is Urabas and Osial is Ose, for example. The closest name I could find is the demon Murmur. Murmur is usually depicted as a soldier, which makes sense for Genshin's official god of war. Morax is sometimes referred to as the god of war, but that's not his actual title. Morax is the patron god of war, like how Guoba is the patron god of soil, but that isn't his real title either. Murata is actually the god of war. Murmur has the power to conjure the dead, which I think is a really unique quality because I can't remember any other demons being able to do that. Maybe Murata will be able to do something similar. We know that Hu Tao, a pyro user, is able to communicate with the dead, so maybe her vision lets her do that because that's one of the properties of pyro thanks to its Archon. That's a huge stretch though. Honestly, there's not much I could find for Murata. If any of you have leaks about her or any ideas on what demon she may be, the best way to let me know is in my Discord server. The link is in the pinned comment. There's already a surprising amount of theories about Kusanali despite not knowing much about her yet. We first heard her name from Yae at the end of the Inazuma Archon quest. Yae called her Lesser Lord Kusanali. I find it interesting that her title is Lesser Lord Kusanali rather than just Lord Kusanali. So far we know two things about her, her name and that she was the only current Archon not present for the Cataclysm. The previous Denjo Archon, the God of the Woods, died in Conria not at the hands of Conrians but when disaster befell the country. Kusanali is the youngest Archon, but I doubt she was born when the God of the Woods died. Her birth and subsequent ascension in such a short time frame feels next to impossible to me. I assume she was alive for a little while before the Cataclysm and was possibly friends with the God of the Woods. In all descriptions we have of her, Kusanali is said to be very friendly and easy to get along with, so I don't think it's out of the question for her to have been friends with the God of the Woods before their passing. I think Lesser Lord Kusanali was her title before she became an Archon, and the God of the Woods was just Lord whatever their name was. Out of respect for her deceased friend, Kusanali kept the title she had before they died. She isn't completely unproblematic, though. In Venti's closed beta test line about her, he says he doesn't like the lifestyle that she imposes upon her people. Dainsleif's line about her in the Tevat chapter storyline preview implies that she is inactive in her country's government, possibly similar to Venti, and that has a lot of consequences. But the people of Sumeru seem to really like her. They have a holiday celebrating her birth, something we haven't seen for any of the other Archons. I think Kusanali will be a really interesting character when we finally get to meet her. Since she's the only Archon that wasn't around for the Cataclysm, I'm super curious about her thoughts on Conria and Celestia. I can see her views going one of two ways. Either she reveres Celestia because she's unaware that they forced the other Archons to destroy Conria, or she hates Celestia just as much as the others seem to because she knows they're responsible for the death of her friend. Kusanali seems really sweet though, so I assume she'll be against Celestia. I really like her already, and I'm honestly ready for her to become one of my new favorite characters when we're finally introduced to her in Sumeru. In Venti's closed beta test lines, we also hear the Tsarits's name, Barnabas.
Though she may be the way she is now, she was once the warmest of us. You did it! You blew away the ice and snow! You exceeded every poem I've ever written and wrote a story even I never dared to imagine. Barnabas has an eye for people. Let's have a big feast tonight to celebrate! Let's bring her along too.
This is another one of those god names that's an incorrect translation of its literal name in the Lesser Key of Solomon. The name in demonology is Barbus. He's one of the many morally ambiguous demons which we see a lot of within the Tsaritsa's character. She created an international crime organization, but only because she has the end goal of protecting all of Teyvat from Celestia. Similarly, Barbus in demonology performs strangely contradictory actions. He causes people to get diseases, but also cures them. One of his really interesting qualities is that he teaches mechanical arts. That was a medieval concept based on manual labor rather than mental skill, but recently the phrase has been used in reference to engineering. I think we can relate the Tsaritsa's version of mechanical arts to the latter. Snezhnaya seems to be one of the most innovative countries in Teyvat, especially with the Fatui. The Tsaritsa has delegated her people to create firearms and delusions, neither of which can be traced back to anyone but the Fatui. Barbus also has the power to change the physical structure of humans, which reminds me of how the Tsaritsa's delusions can create foul legacy forms on their users. Unfortunately, Barbus is one of the lesser-known demons, so there isn't a lot of information on him that I can relate to a potential story for the Tsaritsa. But because she's such an important character, I think we already know what her arc is. According to Venti, she was one of the nicest gods in Teyvat until the Cataclysm happened, and she hasn't been the same ever since. I think she finally understood how evil Celestia is and became upset that she works for them. If the Tsaritsa really didn't care about taking down Celestia, she could just give up her own Gnosis and not worry about the other Archons. But she knows she has to take theirs in order to completely keep Teyvat safe from Celestia because the Gnosis are direct connections to Celestia. Personally, I still think a lot of the Tsaritsa's kind personality shows even in this colder state. She wants to free all of Teyvat, not just herself or her own country, from Celestia's rule. With the Harbingers, there's a pattern of the Tsaritsa personally choosing people who feel left out from society and putting them in positions of power. Whether or not that's a good idea is up to interpretation, but I think it's nice that she takes people who would otherwise be nowhere and helps them out. We won't be meeting the rest of the Archons for a while. We'll see Kusanali sooner than the rest of them, but besides her, don't count on seeing the others for a long time. But I like what I've come up with for them so far. My predictions about their personalities and stories may change if we get more information about them in the future, though. As always, let me know who you're pulling for, and I'll wish you good luck! Thank you so much for liking, commenting, and subscribing, and I'll see you next time. Bye, besties!